Hello, this is Little Green Ghouls, and welcome back to Goosebumps Revisited, a series where I break down a classic Goosebumps book and an episode that goes along with it. I will also be told us for Goosebumps cliches and classic moments. This week, I'm excited to visit Egg Monsters from Mars. As I read this book, the more of it I recalled. I definitely read this book a couple times as a kid, and that's probably because it has some fairly fun moments, and an ending you won't want to miss. If you haven't read this one, it's worth checking out, even if it's not among the greats. I think this 1996 cover is among my all-time favorites. I love goopy, gross slime monsters, so the Egg Monster from Mars is checking off those boxes. I like that the creature on the cover is true to the book, and the warped perspective on the kitchen it gives. I just think it's an interesting cover, and it definitely drew me in as a kid. The 2003 slime border softens up the image for some reason, and we lose some of the detail on the egg monster itself. We also lost some of the kitchen with the cropping, and as per usual, the new cover colors don't really fit the image that great. There was again no later 2000s cover, but we did have a fair amount of merchandise this week, including a trading card book tear-out, another one of these mini puzzles featuring the egg monster, a tassel bookmark with the egg monster, a cool poster that slightly alters the image from the cover, another one of these lithographs of the cover, a pocket screen machine featuring our little egg monster, and of course a holographic necklace with another egg monster. This book was also one of the ones that got a comic adaptation from the UK magazine FBX, and just from looking at the comic panel, you can see they changed quite a bit with the egg monster design, by no longer making them slimy yolk monsters. I still haven't read any of these comic versions of these books, but I've heard some of them aren't all that bad. In the back of the book, we have a promo for the Goosebumps TV show promoting the Cuckoo Clock of Doom, but more interestingly, we have an advertisement for a Goosebumps postcard book that says, "Boo dudes, get ready for a collection of the coolest cards you've ever seen. I have 30 postcards in my all-new Goosebumps postcard book, and each one has a different Goosebumps cover on the front. Collect them, swap them, or send them to your favorite monster. Yours Ghoulie, Curly." After impulse buying the whole Goosebumps series off of eBay last summer, I banned myself from eBay for a year, but now I'm tempted to make this postcard book my first purchase back. Our front tag says, "They're no yolk," which of course sounds like they're no joke, and our back tag says, "Which came first, the monster or the egg?" And this is a play on the existential chicken or egg question, but let's read the blurb on the back. An egg hunt. That's what Dana Johnson's bratty little sister Brandy wants for her birthday party, and whatever Brandy wants, Brandy gets. Dana's not big on egg hunts, but that was before we found the egg. It's not like a normal egg. It's about the size of a softball. It's covered with ugly blue and purple veins, and it's starting to hatch. So let's find out what this egg is in the summary. The book opens with our introduction to Dana Johnson, and he, yes he, because today I learned Dana is also a boy's name, is busy complaining about his younger sister Brandy. I feel like it's been a while since we've had a pair of siblings that actually like each other, and I hope we see that return at some point. Dana thinks Brandy is a spoiled brat who always gets what she wants, and for her birthday, she wants an egg hunt. Dana thinks this request is ridiculous, but as far as I'm concerned, this is a pretty mild birthday activity request. It seems pretty cheap and straightforward to me, so what's the big deal, Dana? I think Dana has a bit of a superiority complex going on here, because he's not like the other boys. He's serious, and he likes serious things like science. He wants to be a scientist like his father, who's a chemist at a perfume company, and I kinda love that we got a specific job this time versus just the vague Goosebumps mad scientist father. The mom isn't as lucky though, and all we know about her is that she works in a lab too, and did things with white rats, so maybe we don't want to know the details of her job. We learned Brandy's birthday is the week before Easter, so now I'm really not getting the problem here with an egg hunt. This is like somebody having a problem with me for having a graveyard cake as a kid because my birthday is the week before Halloween. Brandy's invited her whole class to egg hunt, and there's even a grand prize American Girl doll, so this family's going all out. Dana and his friend Ann also get to do the egg hunt, despite Dana's criticisms of the activity. Dana can't get over the immaturity of these 10-year-olds he's surrounded by, and Ann reminds him that when he was 10 he liked the Ninja Turtles, so he shouldn't judge. Dana is offended by this for some reason and denies ever liking the Ninja Turtles. Dana and I would not get along so far, because he appears to hate fun. Ann reminds Dana that he even had a Ninja Turtle themed birthday party, which unlocked a memory for me because I also had a Ninja Turtle themed birthday party when I was 4. Anyways, the egg hunt begins and Dana is off to a slow start because he can't find an area that's not already swarmed with kids. Just when he's about to get his first egg, he hears a scream and a chapter cliffhanger. This ends up just being one of the kids who accidentally crushed an egg because the parents didn't have time to boil them, or even dye any of them, so these kids are just running around gathering up plain old white eggs. I have to say this is pretty low effort on the parents' part. After the first egg is crushed, this releases the worst instincts in all of these kids and we're treated to a chapter-long egg fight. Eggs are flying all over, and Brandy even gets pelted while crying and begging her party guests to stop. This is why you never invite the whole class. They have no loyalty. Dana gets in on the egg tossing action, but stops when he realizes one of the eggs in his basket is much larger than the others and is a strange pale green. It's also covered in purplish blue veins scattered all across the shell like cracks. Dana realizes not only is this egg extremely weird looking, but it also seems to be pulsating like it's alive. He runs to show Anne his new egg friend when he suddenly trips over Stubby and Sheepdog. He lands on top of the egg, but lucky for Dana and the egg, it's resilient and doesn't get splattered. He reaches Anne, but she thinks he's just bringing her more ammo and quickly launches the special egg before Dana can stop her. Once again, Dana gets lucky and the egg is caught by a girl and heaved back at Anne, so Dana is able to intercept the egg back to safety. The egg is now pulsating even more and hot to the touch. All this pulsating is reminding me of the gruel from It Came From Beneath the Sink. The parents are finally on the scene, trying to stop the egg fight, and the dad is livid because these kids have egged the shit out of his garage, which is gonna ruin the paint. The mom is busy trying to comfort a bunch of girls who are crying because their hair is covered in yolk, so Dana decides just to take the egg inside and show them later. Dana thinks it could possibly be a turtle egg since Anne found a turtle in her yard last fall, but doesn't think turtle eggs are covered in purple veins. He hides the egg in his sock drawer and heads back outside to watch the chaos of the party. The guests are all leaving and Brandy is raging over the state of her party, and her parents are raging at her for letting an egg fight happen, although in Brandy's defense, she really did try to stop it. We jump to that night and Dana is out to dinner with his grandparents celebrating Brandy's birthday. She gets a gift certificate for a CD store because it's 1996. By the time they get home, Dana is too tired to study his egg, so he heads to bed. While drifting off to sleep, he hears some sudden thumping from inside the sock drawer. The thumping gets super aggressive and Dana wonders if a turtle is trying to bust out of the drawer. When he gets the courage to open it, he finds the egg just sitting there like he left it, except when he goes to touch it, he finds it's now burning hot. He cradles it carefully and then spends half a chapter going room to room, trying to get somebody else to acknowledge his cool new egg, but they've all had enough eggs for one day and ignore his attempts to share. His dad even tells him to go sit on it and see if it hatches. The next morning, he awakens to the sound of the egg hatching. He races to the sock drawer just in time to see it bursting open and spilling yellow slime all over his socks. The mystery creature also keeps aggressively grunting throughout this process. We then get to see this creature. I held my breath as a weird creature pushed itself out of the breaking shell. A yellow lumpy thing. A baby chicken? No way. I couldn't see a head, or wings, or feet. I gripped the dresser top and stared down at it. The strange creature pushed away the last section of shell. This was amazing. It rolled wetly over my socks. A blob. A sticky, yellow, shiny blob. It looked like a pile of runny scrambled eggs, except it had tiny green veins crisscrossing all over it. The yellow blob throbbed. It made sick, wet sucking sounds. He carefully closes the drawer so the blob can't escape and races to find his parents, except no one's home because they all left to go to Brandy's piano lessons. We then have a multi-chapter event where Dana has to figure out how to get this creature over to Anne's house to show it off. I personally would have just called Anne over on the phone, but Dana settles on putting it in a shoebox, almost grabs it with his bare hands, settles on a baseball glove, changes his mind, and then gets a small gardening shovel. The creature does not take kindly to this, and as Dana is trying to carefully carry it over to the shoebox, it growls like an angry dog, which causes Dana to drop it on top of his shoe. He then instinctively picks it up with his hands, and nothing happens. He sets it in the box and wipes the goo from his hands. The creature bounces around in the box while Dana thinks what to do next. He spends some time thinking maybe it's too early to visit Anne, but settles on going over to her house anyways. Once there, he sees that the family is on theme and having scrambled eggs for breakfast. He's eager to show off the creature, and as he's walking over to Anne, he trips over Stubby again and the box goes flying. It pops open and sends the creature sprawling across Anne's plate, and she starts shrieking about rotten eggs. Anne's mom then moves at the speed of light and grabs Anne's plate and spins scooping it into the garbage disposal. Dana's able to save the egg creature before it slides down the drain, and Anne's mom throws him out of the house because the creature's dripping yellow goo all over her clean kitchen floor. Once in the backyard, Dana's able to show off the egg creature properly to Anne, and she wonders if it's a turtle that's been born without a shell. The kids then conclude maybe it's a new species. Dana says he's going to take it to the little science lab 3 blocks away. You know, your friendly neighborhood science lab. Anne then declares she has better things to do and isn't going to go to the science lab on her Saturday off. As Dana's leaving for the science lab, he again trips over Stubby, and I thought we were going to send this poor little creature flying for like the 3rd damn time in its short little life, but Dana's able to catch his balance this time. We then spend some time with Dana riding on his bike one-handed to the lab while he dodges various obstacles and tries to keep the creature from hopping out of the box. Once he reaches the lab, he's disappointed to find that it's closed on Saturdays and Sundays. This ends up being a fake out, and the old man comes to the door. He informs Dana that they're a science lab, not a vet, because he thinks the creature is a sick bird at first. It would have to be a very, very sick bird to look like the egg monster. Dana updates the scientist on the egg situation, and the scientist is now intrigued. We learn his name is Dr. Gray, and he's the managing lab scientist of this little setup. Once in the lab, Dr. Gray informs us what this little creature really is. Apparently, eggs landed all over town from a meteor shower, and Dr. Gray went out and gathered them all up, but must have missed a few. Dr. Gray thinks they're from Mars because there was a large storm on Mars 2 years ago that sent things hurtling into space. Dana is stoked because this means he found an alien species and suddenly starts to emphasize that it's his Martian because he found it in his backyard. Dr. Gray offers to show him something and we get a return of the clunky cliffhanger. Dana attempts to peer into a room window and begins to freak the fuck out because he can't see anything because Dr. Gray didn't turn on the light, totally warranting a chapter cliffhanger. Once the light is on, he sees an entire room of egg creatures like the one in his shoebox. They enter the room and Dana complains that it's extremely cold. Dr. Gray says they keep it cold because otherwise the egg monsters start to melt, and they seem to prefer being chilly. As Dana is quizzing Dr. Gray on the creatures, he starts panicking because he realizes all the egg creatures have formed a circle around them. Dr. Gray assures him that the creatures are harmless and sometimes they make various shapes, possibly trying to communicate with them. Dana releases his egg creature into the pack and is sad to see it go. He asks if he can come visit it when Dr. Gray is like, "Oh no, you're not going anywhere. We don't want anyone to know about these creatures." Dr. Gray says we can't risk the world going into a panic because we've been invaded by egg creatures, and he wants to study what happens to Dana since he's been handling the creatures with his bare hands. Dana bolts for the door, but doesn't get very far since it's electronically locked and controlled by Dr. Gray. Once Dr. Gray leaves the freezing cold room, the egg creatures all begin chattering like chimps. I guess Dr. Gray is just going to keep Dana in the room with the monsters to study, and not his own private cell. The egg monsters seem to be chatting amongst themselves and studying Dana closely. Dana recognizes his egg monster because it has a vein pattern on its face. He's freezing and realizing he could die in this room when suddenly the egg monsters all cluster together and attack. They stop a few inches from him and form a circle again. Dana makes a triangle with his fingers and the creatures make a triangle in response, which thrills Dana because he thinks he's on his way to communicating with them somehow. He decides to do a full body inspection to see if he has any rashes or spots from handling the egg monsters. He thinks he's fine at first, but when he touches his leg, it's all soft and mushy, so he freaks the fuck out again, thinking he's turning into an egg creature. Dana is quick to panic because this just ends up being an egg creature on his ankle, which I would think would have been fairly obvious, but I guess not. He tries to distract himself from how cold he is and begins thinking sunny thoughts like he's in The Giver. Suddenly, a food tray slides in containing macaroni and cheese with milk. Dana hates mac and cheese, but eats it to warm himself up. He then decides if he's gonna escape, he needs some sort of plan. I hope this works because I don't particularly want to spend the rest of this book just sitting in a freezer. I may be in for a disappointment though, because this grand idea Dana has turns out to be call mom and dad for help, except he doesn't have access to a telephone. Dana, I think he might be trapped in some page filler. He remembers he told Anne where he was going, so it's only a matter of time before his parents come looking for him. Dana proceeds to sleep for a couple hours when he's suddenly awoken by the sounds of voices. It's Dr. Gray and his dad, but Dr. Gray's busy saying Dana never stopped by, so that destroys Dana's chances of being rescued. Except the dad then asks to take a look around since Dana has a habit of being places he's not supposed to be. We then spend 2 chapters as the dad walks around the lab and can't hear Dana's cries for help. We then spend a few pages explaining why the dad can't hear or see Dana. Long story short, one-way glass and soundproofing. This book sure came to a bit of a halt once we entered this lab. Dr. Gray leaves, but not before informing Dana he'll be doing some tests on him tomorrow, and they don't sound pleasant. Dana feels tired again and wants to go to sleep, but is suddenly afraid of sleeping next to the egg monsters, even though he already slept next to them for a couple of hours, so I'm not really sure what that's all about. Dana is certain he'll freeze to death overnight and is curled up in a ball trying to keep warm when the egg monsters all start to move towards him. As I was reading this, I remembered that the egg monster is covering him like a blanket at some point, so this entire time in the freezer, I've just been waiting for it to happen. And it finally does. Over the course of 2 chapters, the creatures form into one giant omelet and proceed to slide across Dana. He thinks he's being smothered at first, but then realizes they've just formed a big old blanket for him. He falls asleep, but then is later woken up by somebody aggressively shaking him. Dr. Gray is back and he is pissed. He wants to know why Dana destroyed all of the egg monsters and turned them into a blanket. He heaves the egg blanket at the wall, which causes all the little egg monsters to shriek in pain. This makes Dana angry because the egg monster saved his life, and he can't believe Dr. Gray would just throw them like that. Dr. Gray is too busy shouting at Dana to notice the egg blanket is in the corner bubbling and getting angry. Dr. Gray announces he's gonna make it even colder in here and freeze Dana to death once and for all. He starts to leave, but that's when the egg blanket springs into action. It smothers itself on top of Dr. Gray, bubbling and hissing as he thrashes around underneath it. Dana seizes the moment and bolts out of the freezer and out of the laboratory. He gets home, and rather than explaining to his parents what happened at the lab, he just keeps shouting, "Egg monsters from Mars! Egg monsters from Mars!" at them repeatedly. Once he realizes this approach isn't working, he takes the time to mention the lab, and the whole family loads up in the car to return to Dr. Gray. I'd personally probably take the time to call the police at this point, but once at the lab, Dana is disappointed to find that the room is empty of both egg monsters and Dr. Gray, and concludes they must have returned to Mars and took Dr. Gray with them. Dana spends the next day tired and in bed and feeling a bit strange. He can hear his sister telling everybody that he went nuts, but he just sleeps through it. He eventually wakes up to Anne calling for him from the driveway. Dana is in an extra good mood and races out the door happily, but as he's crossing the lawn to reach Anne, he stops and I crouched down on the grass, and I laid the biggest egg you ever saw. And first, can I just say thank you to my commenters for not spoiling me on this one, because I cackled to myself when I read this. Poor Dana is just strolling across the yard when he suddenly stops and shits out an egg. This is easily a top 5 ending for me because this led me to think, what did those egg monsters actually do to this poor boy when they covered him in a supposed blanket? So yeah, that's how this one ends. The egg monsters impregnated Dana and he shit out an egg. Egg Monsters from Mars didn't get an episode pairing, and since we're running out of Goosebumps episodes to watch, I went with a recommendation from Spongy444 in the comments and watched Bad Egg from R.L. Stine's The Haunting Hour. This series was new to me, so the charm of nostalgia isn't there, but I can see why this will probably hold up for the next generation of kids. It's definitely better made, and I found it entertaining enough for kids media that I have no attachment to. Oh, and it has William B. Davis, the smoking man from The X-Files in it, which is an easy notable actor for me, so let's check it out. This is already looking pretty on theme despite being a different story. There's our smoking man, and even in this show he's a corrupt government official.
They're far more aggressive than we'd hoped. We wouldn't want the Pentagon to think that we'd accidentally destroyed one of their genetically mutated weapons.
So, just so you're up to speed, these evil eggs got donated to a middle school somehow, and the kids have to treat them like they're their babies.
They are your children.
This boy will make a great father someday.
What happens if I put it on a swing and it falls off and cracks its head? What if, when I'm teaching it how to ride a bike, it falls off?
Look, just...
I think this kid is great.
You called it an egg. My child is very offended, Mrs. Topic.
Make sure your parents know about your project, and I'll see you Monday. With all your...
Uh-oh, we got threats of military school going on here, so the stakes are high.
I told you, if you didn't shape up, you'd be headed for military school.
I feel like it would be simple to just leave it in a cupboard or something and leave it alone.
You have to, keep it alive or whatever.
Well, we'll be...
This child is a rebel by nature.
You're gonna drop it. Whoa! Oh, crud.
Watch out, Queequeg. Damn, they killed off the dog. Wait till y'all find the dog.
Ostriches don't have teeth. Corporal?
I'm ready to get a look at this thing.
Yes, we'll have everything. Why did you do that? That thing is epically ugly.
I would not be so forgiving if it ate my dog.
Are we gonna...
These guys sure got in this house quick.
Thanks, but I don't need help folding laundry.
We have reason to believe you're harboring a dangerous animal.
This father has asshole victim written all over him.
What about that egg you're supposed to be taking care of? Aren't you supposed to keep that dumb thing with you at all times?
He's not dumb, so we'll just take him with us. Right, Timmy?
Corporal!
Timmy! No, you can't kill my dad. A paint can fell on your head. You need to stack things more neatly, Dad.
Timmy is a great monster name.
They want Timmy.
Open up!
What do I do? Don't let them in.
Oh good, the dog is alive. I can forgive Timmy now. Timmy is beautiful and makes his escape.
Run! Run, Timmy, run!
It looks like this kid is actually off to military school.
Oh no, the kid won't learn what it means to cherish the things he loves until he feels what it's like to lose them.
I can't believe that they're actually sending you to military school. You'll be all alone.
This is gonna end up like Child's Play 3.
Hope you like marching, Timmy. Because I have a feeling we're gonna get in a lot of trouble together.
Overall, I thought Egg Monsters from Mars started out fairly strong, but petered out a bit once Dana was trapped in the lab. I liked the classic setup of hiding a mystery creature in your room as it starts to grow. It reminded me of Gremlins in a way. Once we hit the lab, it gets a bit repetitive with Dana just being cold for 40 pages, and the egg monsters don't do a whole lot except stare at him. I thought the ending was A+ though for being ridiculous, and kind of gross if you thought too much about it. I'm gonna give this one 4 out of 5 eggs. It could have been better, but it was more fun than I've had than like the last 5 books. I'm also a sucker for a creature feature. Okay, on to our totals. Egg Monsters from Mars didn't have any vomit, shoulder scares, it was only a dreams, or pranks, but it did have some 90s moments. In Getting Jiggy with the 90s, we had 4 90s moments. These included the American Girl dolls, because they really started taking off in the 90s, Ninja Turtles, a VHS camcorder, and CDs. This raises our total to 138 jiggy 90s moments. Asshole Victim is pretty straightforward this week, with Dr. Gray being our main antagonist, and eventually getting taken out by the Monster of the Week. This raises our total to 26 Asshole Victims. Egg Monsters from Mars was a return to form and had 12 chapter cliffhangers. This raises our Goosebumps total to 513. Our clunky cliffhanger award this week has to be when Dana races into a window and then freaks out that it's dark inside. Sure, it's one-way glass, but it did not warrant this bizarre freakout. Shocker ending. Our big twist for this book was when poor Dana suddenly has to stop and shit out an egg. I just watched Bridesmaids, so it kinda reminded me of the wedding dress in the street scene. This brings our Goosebumps series total to 35. Well, that's it for Egg Monsters from Mars. I liked this one, even though the egg monsters were a little one note in the lab, but it was fun leading up to that moment, and the ending kinda made the book for me. Next week we have Beast from the East, which I read a couple times as a kid because it didn't make any sense, and I thought it was just a dyslexic me thing, but it wasn't. Let me know in the comments what you thought of Egg Monsters from Mars. I can see why this one might be divisive. Would you handle an egg monster barehanded? What's your favorite style of egg? Also, what did you think of my egg-themed horror clips this week? Anyways, as always, thanks again for watching, and make sure you subscribe for
the pride, the love.